Thank you for joining us, Deadline Live. That, of course, Jimi Hendrix. It is the anniversary of his death today, September 18, 2008. Richard Andrew Grove with us from 8thestate.com or 8thestate.com. You can just Google him and find that right away. A lot of good stuff there, including how to use hemp for energy, how to stop the war. He also supports the Iraqi vets against the war. Adam Kokesh on the program with us tomorrow, part of that group. And a lot of the fundraising he does goes to the IVAW as well as the Feel Good Foundation. So certainly, Richard, it can be said your heart is certainly in the right place, and you are a truth teller, my friend.
Well, thanks, Jack. That means a lot coming from you.
All right, let's pick up where we left off. You kind of dropped a bombshell, and that's why I wanted to have you on. And I'm reading things in a lot of the same ways you are. Hank Greenberg using the Fed to retake his company, AIG. Any elaboration, any evidence, any documentation you can throw behind that and let us know exactly why you think that would be appreciated. Go ahead.
That would have been good for me to print it out, right? I do have it, and I'm going to post it on the website along with this video in the next 24 hours. But what it posits is this. When Hank Greenberg got displaced out of his own AIG, he then became chairman. He fell back to be chairman of something called the Star Foundation and something called SICO, the Star Investment Company. And so when you go into what these entities do, it brings what AIG does into context, because AIG, for instance, at one time at least in the recent history, had more private airliners than any other corporation out there. So they had their own private fleet of airlines, like the largest private fleet outside of the military. And so the question is, what does AIG do? What is the nature of insurance? What is the nature of reinsurance? And as some people...
You mean protection money, right? But go ahead.
Right, sure. Protection money. There's where you bring in Kroll, because Kroll does kidnap and ransom protection and these sort of policies that are held by top CEOs and covered by AIG. They actually use Kroll as the operator, the actionary that goes in and rescues these executives who were held hostage for money and whatnot. So, you have that aspect of the insurance, and then when you get into the reinsurance, really, along with software, that is a prime vehicle and a plausible place where you can launder large amounts of money, because you're dealing with all this fluff, and there's not much solidness there. So it's a huge area. And so where you back up a step and you say, what was Marsh & McLennan? They're the world's largest insurance brokerage. They own reinsurance brokers. They own insurance companies. They're partnered, father and son, with AIG. And Hank's other son, Evan, ran ACE Insurance. So you've got his family in control of these three insurance companies. And then as a result of 9/11, what happens? Premiums go sky high, right? And at the same time, AIG and Marsh are caught cheating their customers out of hundreds of billions of dollars. And, when Spitzer investigates, I mean, that's a whole other story, because you have to understand where Elliot Spitzer came from. He was a rich kid whose dad was much like the Donald Trump of his time. Spitzer, financed his own campaign partially, but the other guy who helped Spitzer finance his campaign and get into politics was a guy named Michael Cherkasky. Now, Michael Cherkasky was the CEO of Kroll, and when Spitzer investigates Marsh and AIG, and Kroll is part of that group, AIG sells Kroll to Marsh, and Cherkasky, the guy who brought Spitzer into the politics game, becomes the CEO at Marsh, making it very hard for Spitzer to do an investigation. And at the same time, Spitzer's claiming to do an investigation into 9/11, but he never connects all the dots. Now, it's not my job to speculate why he doesn't connect the dots. It's just to notice the fact that you've got AIG and Blackstone involved with financing the World Trade Center, security of the World Trade Center. Marsh & McLennan is not only involved with their stock put options the week before 9/11, along with American Airlines, but Marsh gets hit in the attacks, and Marsh lost 320 people. And then the CEO of Marsh Risk is L. Paul Bremer, and L. Paul Bremer went over to Iraq and was overseeing,
the governor of Iraq, yeah.
Right. Hundreds of billions of dollars again.
And he's the one that, of course, broke up the military, and that, of course, precipitated in the sectarian violence. And then, of course, we can get into P2OG and some of these other operations. But how the plot thickens. Go ahead.
Well, so you have all these things, and they're kind of unnoticed both by the 9/11 community as well as the traditional news community. The traditional news community is running stories on Spitzer and why he can't crack AIG and Marsh and, what's going on there. And Spitzer's own account says that the people at Marsh put on black hats, meaning that they weren't willing to share investigation information. They weren't willing to share information freely with the Attorney General. And Spitzer in his articles says, I can't figure out why they would do that. Well, I know why they would do that. Because there was a lot more to be seen, except beyond this little $100 million or $100 billion fraud or whatever that's going on. There was.
Exactly. We're going to get to that during the show as well. I have to ask you this: you got Kukowski now heading Kroll, the financier and the backer of Elliot Spitzer. Kroll, known as the CIA of Wall Street. Also, companies hire them for corporate espionage. It makes you wonder if Spitzer was throwing a few bones. I mean, this is how the mafia and the FBI, work together with informants. They give you a few tips, you leave them alone. One of those deals. And it makes you wonder if Spitzer and some of the targets were provided by Kroll and their corporate espionage in order to keep him fat and happy. And maybe he just got a little too big for his own head, and they had to finish him off with the prostitution allegations. It seems all rather convenient.
That's actually very interesting because the night that he was busted, right before he was busted, Spitzer penned an article for the Washington Post. And this article, you can look it up. I'll put it up on the website as well. But this article basically cracks down on how the government's bailing out all these predatory corporations and all these predatory lenders when they should be letting them go out of business. And as soon as Spitzer prints that article, then he gets hit with the media.
Hold on to that because we're having trouble hearing you over the music. Let's come back. We'll pick up with Spitzer.
Right on.
That is Richard Andrew Grove with us on the program today, 8thestate.com. You can go there and check out a lot of this information for yourself. We'll be going into 9/11 and now the economic 9/11 and the fallout from all of that. Problem, reaction, solution. Deadline Live, I'm Jack Blood.